Today we're doing a video about Skeletor, Overlord of Evil, Master of Destruction, guy with a skull face. If you're a He-Man Masters of the Universe fan, you definitely know Skeletor. He's the main bad guy. I'm not the main bad guy, well, at least not to most people. I'm Scott ToyGuru Neitlich. I was the brand manager for Masters of the Universe Classics, which ran from 2008 till, well, I guess 2020, counting the Super 7 items, which definitely count, but I definitely wasn't a part of. I was a part of the Mattel, kind of 90% of the line. And I had a request to do a video about Skeletor. And not just any Skeletor, but a very specific version of Skeletor. And Joey Shalom, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, asked me to do a video about the wackiness that is Disco Skeletor and how he came to be. And hey, for those of you who have ideas for videos, leave them in the comments, because they become videos, just like this. All right, so Disco Skeletor. Who is he? And how did he get to actually be a legitimate version of Skeletor that's even shown up in the comic books? Well, probably because Tim Seeley is a huge Motu nut and is an awesome all-around guy. But that's a story for another bio video. Disco Skeletor's origins lie in the 2000X series that Mattel put out. And essentially, it was a redeco of Skeletor that came out for this line, where he had bright orange skin and bright orange armor and purple highlights on his accessories and actually on his chest. And for the most part, the adult collector community thought that this was odd, to say the least. It was kind of a unique, a weird look for Skeletor. But it's interesting how over the years, this look has almost kind of been embraced as... It's one of those things like when things are like so bad, they're good, if you will. Like things that are so hokey and so out there that kind of like the Chia Pet, we like embrace it and now think it's the coolest thing ever, even though it might be hokey on offset. And even to the point that, the last couple images you've seen, Disco Skeletor, as he's known by the fans, has even been done in multiple form factors by multiple companies. But here's the original. This is where it all came from, was the 2000X repaint Skeletor that came at the tail end of the first year before they switched to the green cards. And here he is in all of his carded glory. And you can definitely see he, what you call, does pop on card, on shelf. He's definitely very bright, and you recognize him. And that's why he's kind of earned the nickname Disco Skeletor, because he kind of looks like he's covered in disco light colors. At least that's what the adult collector community has dubbed him, and that is sort of the legend that is built up behind him. All right, so why Disco Skeletor? Well, we have to look at the 2000X line as a whole and the toy industry as a whole to kind of answer that question. Now, the 2000X line was definitely known for a lot of repaints of major characters. And some of those repaints wound up looking cooler than others, and some of them made more sense than others. But looking at something like Disco Skeletor, you have to look at him within the context of other repaints that happened in the line. I mean, could this have been, Disco Stratos in a way? Possibly, but maybe the colors just weren't, as shocking and as, counter to how he usually is, versus the way Skeletor kind of had that complete remake, giving him that bright orange skull and the orange and the yellow armor, which he'd never had in any animated series or anything like that. So yes, repaints definitely a major part of the 2000X line, but it still kind of doesn't explain the wackiness of Disco Skeletor. And another part of the puzzle is looking at Batman, actually, as an action figure line, because this was a major driving factor for the 2000X series. Batman is notorious for basically coming out in every color of the rainbow. Different outfits, and they usually come up with a reason, like the green outfits are anti-slime or something like that, and the blue might be stealth. But Batman comes in a ton of different colors, and a lot of this is because of his origins in the comics. So actually, Hasbro did the very first one of these back in the 90s, but as a toy, this concept really was what drove the creative direction for the Motu X line, or the 2000 X line, was the idea of doing He-Man sort of like Batman. The idea that He-Man could come in all sorts of different crazy colors, or different armors. The notorious, Smash Blade He-Man that was a peg warmer for a long time. This is because the brand managers at the time were looking at the Motu world and franchise as Batman-esque, meaning Batman was the main character and he could be done in tons of different ways. But that's not really the way especially adult collectors view the line, regardless of how kids see it. For the adult collector, they see it as a world. They want to get all the characters, from Tila to Trapjaw to everybody. But for the brand managers at the time, they were very much viewing the line as kind of Batman-esque, where He-Man would be the main character and available in lots of different colors and lots of repaints. That's also why some of the secondary characters were hard to find. They didn't ship as many as He-Man. Now, that bled over to other characters too. Like, for example, Beastman here had a repaint. Obviously, not the main character like Skeletor versus He-Man, but in the wave that the Disco Skeletor variant came in, he also shipped with these 4 other evil warriors that were all repainted. And again, the part of the motivation of that was looking at the success of Batman and how he as a lead character could be repackaged and repainted over and over and over again. Now, whether or not this worked for Masters of the Universe, is up for debate, but that was definitely the design direction and where thinking was. So, again, like Beastman, you had Triclops here in slightly different colors, but still having the essence of Triclops, having, the green, and the sword, etc., etc. Another figure that shipped in this wave, which I think is actually one of the best repaints they did, was this Trapjaw that had green skin. Now, this was kind of the reason, I think this was a really great repaint is because this was actually a bit of an homage to his original mini-comic outfit, or color scheme, if you will, where he had the green skin. It wasn't a one-to-one of that, but at least you can kind of see where the inspiration came. It wasn't as random or just, slapping on new colors. They've even had, toy companies like Super 7 have even done this figure, have done Trapjaw, in his mini comic colors. In fact, actually, I think at PowerCon they did the classics version of Trapjaw like this, and he got some new tooling, which was great. It's always great when characters can get new tooling and not just be a straight repaint for a collector line, that is. We'll get into a kid line in a moment. So either way, getting back to the point is that this wave that Disco Skeletor shipped in was full of evil warriors in new decos that were, again, sort of inspired by the idea that Batman could come in tons of different decos. And again, whether that works, that concept that, He-Man, like Batman, is a main character that can come out over and over again, that's a subject for debate. But at least, that can provide some of the thinking behind these repaints. Now, while the previous 3 were not that jarring, now we get to kind of a bit more of the jarring repaints, starting with this Merman figure that, again, shipped in the Disco Skeletor wave. Not totally out of character for Merman, darker skin, different gold highlights, but he did have kind of those beady red eyes that just kind of jumped out. And again, adult collectors might say, well, wait a minute, there's logical repaints for Merman. You don't just need to give him beady red eyes. There's, Filmation Merman, and there's mini-comic Merman, which had blue skin in his original, the Alcala mini-comics, the first 4. He was blue, and in fact, in Motu Classics, we did that blue version. It's actually one of my personal favorite versions of Merman. I keep him in my bathroom, actually, right on the sink. But that's a story for Geek Wives, probably, not this video. So obviously Mattel, knows Merman. They know what color schemes work. And clearly with Trapjaw, there was the influence of the mini-comic why that's terrible English, why they did him in those colors for this wave. And the question might be, why couldn't Merman have had those colors? And I think the answer is very similar to the same answer as Disco Skeletor, of why we got sort of bloodshot red eyes Merman after, maybe a long night of drinking, pulling himself out of like the algae of the Attorney in Sea or something like that. I don't know. Either way, it's kind of bringing us in as an introduction to as this wave of repaints. All comes down to the fact that tooling is expensive. I've explained in a few other videos about how action figures are made, that action figures come from a tool, a big metal mold, kind of like those Play-Doh molds we had as kids. And these things are really, really expensive to make. They have to be, they're made by hand. They're in giant pieces of, iron and steel because it needs to have hot liquid plastic injected into it. If the figure is articulated, there has to be, so many parts. Like this is a non-articulated Buzz Lightyear that's just sort of probably a PVC, or like this train is not articulated. But if an action figure has articulation, every single part has to be in the tool. You may even need more than one tool. And tools are an extremely expensive investment. They cost between $30,000 and $100,000. So you could buy a luxury car instead of buying a tool for your action figure. If you're a company that makes toys, you're probably buying the tool. And that's why every toy company, whether you're making toys for kids or collectors or whoever your audience is, you're going to want to maximize that tool because it's an investment. And if you use it once and you're done, it's a poor investment. And obviously, Mattel is aware of what the adult collector wants as far as variants for Skeletor. They did this great Keldor figure that I think still really, turned the tables and set a new bar as far as, collector figures for Masters of the Universe's brand. This was probably one of the first figures that was truly just aimed at the adult collector and sold at Comic-Con. So if Mattel is obviously aware of what adult collectors want from their Skeletor variants, as proof by that Keldor figure that was amazing and still is, then why not release Keldor at retail, maybe with less accessories, or even more so, why create this version of Skeletor that has notoriously become Disco Skeletor, and as I noted, has notoriously been released by many toy companies? Well, here's the answer. Toys are for kids. As adult collectors, we tend to get a little bit off center. As we see these toys and we think they're always for us. And honestly, that's not true. Yes, sometimes there are adult collector lines, like what we did on Matty Collector was absolutely an adult collector line. But if a toy is sold in a toy store, and whether that's Target or Walmart or Toys R Us, rest in peace, or Tom's Toys or Toys & Co., 80% of those toys that are sold at retail at mass have to be bought by kids, parents, grandparents, or gift givers in order to justify their retail space. If you take a line that's just aimed at adult collectors and stick it in the aisle, it's not going to justify its space. That's why Target has that wall in the back behind the TVs for just collector product. But the toy aisle, the main toy aisle, well, as adult collectors, we tend to see ourselves as the center of the known universe, and that everything revolves around us and everything is made for us. And it kind of takes a little bit of a shift in thinking and stepping back and realizing, while I might really like to collect these toys, and these are awesome, a toy company has to produce toys where the money is. Just doing adult collector product can usually sustain a small company, like a Super 7 or a NECA, if you will. But the big companies, your Spin Masters, your Mattels, your Hasbros, the bulk of their sales need to be with kids because that's where the bulk of purchases are. And for kids, it's all about color. Color really pops on shelf. This was a big part of when I was on Hot Wheels. We really talked about this when designing cars. So a character like Disco Skeletor, if you will, he's not designed for the adult collector. He may be part of a line like Masters of the Universe Classics, 2000X, that collectors are really into, and there are collector figures in that line, notably Keldor and She-Ra, sold at Comic-Con, but every figure sold at mass retail is a kid figure. It just so happens that as adult collectors, we also like them, and we're buying them too. We're buying about 20% of them. Now, going back to Disco Skeletor specifically, in his crazy color scheme, why was this chosen? Well, because it pops on shelf, as I was talking about with the Hot Wheels example. Toys that are aimed at kids need to be bright and flashy and get kids' attention. And the colors he's in, I know factually from doing a lot, the work I've done in the toy industry, these are all colors, the orange, the purple, that pop, what are called pop on shelf, meaning they do testing. And if we thought about doing a character like this in classics, doing Disco Skeletor, but really the question is, where do you fit a character like this in? I mean, do you make him a convention exclusive? He can't really be a subscription figure. I mean, he's a bit of a joke figure when it comes to something like Motu Classics. But we did heavily look at, possibly doing him. That previous image was just a fan custom. He's kind of gotten a life of his own, but the reason these colors were created was to sell Skeletor to kids. It had nothing to do with selling it to collectors. Collectors just happened to also be about 20% of the purchase for this line. But it was not a character designed to appeal to the adult collector. It was designed with these bright colors to pop on shelf and be an easy repaint of an existing tool. And it happens that because the tool was so crazy, or I'm sorry, the paint scheme so crazy, the character has kind of gotten a legend of his own and become Disco Skeletor. And like I said, lots of companies have now picked up on this, and it's kind of become a niche within the Motu Classics or Motu collecting world. So there you go, Disco Skeletor rocking out to his beat. A kid figure embraced by collectors, maybe reluctantly, but not designed for them. Designed for kids to maximize tooling and to maximize sales on shelf. Hey, did it work? Well, 2000X is its own story. But he's an awesome character, and I love that he has gotten life beyond 2000X. Wish we could have gotten to him in Classics. That would have been a gaffe. But hey, you don't get to everything. I hope you liked this video. If I missed any facts about Disco Skeletor, let me know. Let me know in the comments, or let me know what other videos you'd like to see. And hey, maybe you'll see those as videos. Give me a subscription, a thumbs up, a like, and I'll see you guys around the internet. Thanks for watching.